Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, Protecting Your Data, Where You Want It, How You Want It. My name is Sean Giordano. I'm Vice President of Sales with Programmer's Paradise. Today we'll have Mike Rozlog from Embarcadero Technologies talking about their solution with you. Before we begin, I'll give you a little company overview. We'll then get into the presentation with Mike from Embarcadero Technologies. Mike is the Senior Director of the Delphi Solutions Group. And then we'll go into a Q&A session and then a wrap-up. So Programmer's Paradise has been in business for over 25 years as a leading reseller of computing and development tools. You can visit us at programmers.com. We've enjoyed a long and fruitful partnership with Embarcadero over the years, particularly selling their RAD Studio, JBuilder, and ER Studio tools. We have a team development services group that will help you in making the assessment, deployment, and migration of these technologies within your infrastructure a much easier process. So our ALM Worldview ecosystem is unique in our organization, and basically what it does is it takes application lifecycle management and breaks it into functional groups. And as you will see here, we incorporate all the best-of-breed technologies in these functional areas of defining, designing, developing, testing, deploying, and managing an application lifecycle management project. So with that, I will turn it over to Mike Rozlog from Embarcadero Technologies. Mike? Thank you.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar on DataSnap, your data, where you want it, how you want it, and we're going to go over this process. As it was said, I was the Senior Director of Delphi Solutions for Embarcadero. Today, let's see here. Give me 2 seconds. I have to flip there we go, to the right slide. So what is DataSnap? And that is that's one of our technologies that we've been talking about for the last couple of releases because we've done a lot of work with it. DataSnap over the years has been a distributed computing architecture that allows you to have clients and servers communicating very quickly and easily, but it was always based on DCOM or the Microsoft technologies. And in the old days, it used to be called the Midas technology, and it was introduced back in Delphi 3. Well, starting with Delphi 2009, we actually updated DataSnap to have a lot more functionality, a lot more capability, and a lot more features. Now, while we still support the Midas technology or the DCOM approach, it's really not the focus of the technology anymore. The technology is now built on open standards, open industry standards like TCP, HTTP, and HTTPS, and it uses simplified XML protocol like JSON, the JavaScript Object Notation Protocol, which is set on value pairs, and it's extremely easy to set these processes up and get them running on your system. So today what we're going to do is go over the technology, and then we're going to go into a fairly in-depth demo of how you can use the technology and how it can work for you in your organization. Now, the new DataSnap 2010 highlights is that we have a lot of new things in there. A couple of things we've done is we've actually added some new wizards to help you get from point A to point B. Back in when we first rewrote it, we had to go in there and build the product up step by step. We've actually added wizards in there to make it so it's really easy for you to go from conception to execution. And we allow you to do this either as a standalone Windows native executable server, or we allow you to do this as a web broker app inside of DataSnap, which means that you can deploy it to IIS, and it's just a DLL that runs inside of IIS. We have, of course, HTTP tunneling, so that you can get through the firewall and go outside of your firewall. We have filters, which I'll talk a little bit more about, which are the concept that I can apply something to the communications channel and change its behavior. We also have callbacks and JSON support inside of the product, and we can host the DataSnap servers either standalone, as I said, or inside of the IIS process. And we can also get to these servers from .NET with, of course, Delphi Prism, our .NET solution for RAD Studio. So keep that in mind as we're going through these processes. As I said, we have these new wizards that basically make it really one click and you're done type approach to getting set up, and we're going to use these today when I'm giving a demonstration, and I'll show you how easy they are to work. As you can see, we have one for the web broker technology, and we have one just for a standalone server. And what's great is that you can set it up as a regular GUI application, you can set it up as a console application, or you can set it up as a service inside of the Windows environment if so desired. Now, of course, the transports that we support out of the box for web server hosting is, of course, HTTP, and of course, as I said before, we also have the tunneling capability so you can get out of there. Now, the DataSnap filters, as I talked about before, are the ability to basically add an interceptor into the communications and then modify the communications before you send it over the wire. So let's say that I wanted to add compression to it. I could basically go in there and add a filter, create a filter that would allow me to compress the stream going across the wire, and I could do that. I could also use it for encryption, so I could encrypt the contents that's going to go over the wire, and then the client would decrypt it and use it from that standpoint. So the concept is that I can basically, I have a client, I have a server, I have a wire that goes in between the client and server, and it basically, I can set the filter to establish a way of the communication so that if I want it to be encrypted, I want it to be compressed, I can set those filters onto the line and we can work in that area. DataSnap also has the concept of callbacks. There are some times when you want your clients to know that something has happened in the server. So I can basically set up a server callback to the client, which means that I can then tell the client what has happened on there. So I set up a feedback loop that runs on the server operations. We also have support for JSON objects so that we can basically put strings, characters, things like that, and we can basically pass information back and forth from the server to the client so that we can use that. You would use the execute command inside of the server, inside the callback object, to go ahead and run that. As I said before, we do support tunneling. And what that allows us to do is basically go through the firewalls, and then we actually emit events out through the tunnel so that we can open session on an error, we can set it on the closed session, and we can also, using the intercepting those events from tunneling, we can also set it up to look for failover, we can also look at replication, and we can also look at load balancing. So this is an extremely advanced server product, but it's been made extremely easy for you to take advantage of all these key capabilities. And hopefully when I'm doing the demo today, you'll see some of the ease of use and some of the quickness that you can get from doing DataSnap inside of your environment. We also have exposed a REST interface. For those who aren't familiar with REST, REST is basically a way that you can, with web access, that you can basically call the object and the method that you're looking for, and you can interact in that way. You don't have to have all these elaborate schemes. You can go right out there. You can do a REST invocation on your server, and basically you go to www.xyz.com/datasnap-rest, the class that you're talking to, the method that you want to do, and then any parameters that you may want to pass. So you can then basically do the calls, and you can do this with the prefix of, you want to put, get, post, or delete from your HTTP methods. So that allows you to have full interaction. And if you think about Amazon Web Services and the way they do it, they also use a REST interface. So this is very natural for anybody doing REST approaches today with web development. DataSnap fits right into that environment and can work and add value to anything that's going on. Of course, I did talk a little bit about JSON, which is a standard. It's a simplified XML approach, and it really is based on value pairs. So, you know, I basically, if you think of value pairs as the property manager inside of Delphi, you know, I have a property, let's say for this example, first name, and then the actual value of that property is John. Last name is another property, and the value for last name is Smith, and the address is, you know, the street address is 21 2nd Street, and the city is New York. So it's basically value pairs so that you can actually set it up, and you can have a hierarchy of those value pairs. So as we said, you could bring back address, or you could bring back street address, or you could bring out city with the value pairs of JSON. And remember, JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. And if you need more information on JSON, you can go out and there's a standard out there. There's examples of how to use it. And so I highly recommend taking a look at it, because as we go forward, JSON is going to continue to be a very, very important part of the application and the structures that we're doing as we go forward. Now, there are a ton of resources already out on the web today on Embarcadero.com that show you how to do all kinds of different things with DataSnap. So, you know, how to use the DataSnap wizard, how to use TCP or HTTP, the transport protocol, how to add filters, how to do callbacks, how to really extend and push the JSON structure, the REST interface, C++ builder clients, Delphi Prism clients, and Delphi for PHP clients. So there is a wealth of information out on Embarcadero.com, and you can basically go out there and you can see and understand some of those that we're going to be doing. There's also a RAD Studio in action with DataSnap, and what's great about this is it has a great technical white paper. It kind of goes over all the things that you need to know to actually build it. We have a ton of YouTube videos out there that kind of show you step by step of how to do it, and you can go see that. If you go to Embarcadero, you say RAD Studio in action, it's the first thing that pops up on the screen, or if you go to RAD Studio, you'll see the DataSnap, you can click on it, it'll take you there. We also have a ton of Code Rage replays. So if you go out to the EDN, you can basically re-watch the replays from you know, Code Rage 4, and Adrian is one of our key architects. He's the main architect on DataSnap, and he has a lot of great insight and a lot of great examples out there to show you. Jim Turney, as some of you may have know inside of the organization since you've been around a while, does a lot of the DataSnap tooling and a lot of the .NET enablement, so the wizards that you're going to see, how they work and things like that. The REST support from Jonathan and the DataSnap server methods also from Jim. He's also got a very nice blog. If you haven't looked at our blogs, you can follow my blog, you can follow Jim's blog, you can follow David I, of course, and Andriano, all of the people in here, but you can just go to blogs.embarcadero.com and you can click on the name that you want and you can follow us in that process. Now, we also want to put out a special thank you to Bob Swart, because Bob is the one who wrote the white paper and that goes over some of the technical details. Bob is working on a 100-page courseware manual for it, and if you would be interested in this, you can reach out to Bob and basically ask him about it and do like that. And if you want to, you can reach him at bob@ebob42.com, and it should be a really great session from that. So what I'm going to basically do is just remind you of a couple things. This is the question and answer time that we normally put in there, and you can go in there and add questions in there and set them up. But you can also, and throughout the demonstration you can do that, but I want to make you aware of a couple of other things. Because you guys have joined this session today, you're also eligible for 20% discount on RAD Studio Delphi C++ Builder. So don't forget, because you are special and because you came to the programmers webinar, you get an additional discount above and beyond what normal people do, and it's 20%. So I highly recommend, if you're looking at RAD Studio 2010, you're looking at Delphi, you're looking at C++ Builder, I highly recommend you go out there and go to programmers and pick up the product, because you do get an additional savings for attending this webinar and participating with it. And again, please don't hesitate to go in there and ask questions from that standpoint. So if we go in there, let's see if there's any questions right now. I don't see any questions at this particular moment in time. So remember, if you before we're going to go into this demonstration, again, if you have questions, go into the Q&A, type in the questions, and we'll go. I'll respond to those throughout the session. And remember the 20% discount. So let's go ahead, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my desktop for you. And what I've done is I've tried to build a application that is going to allow you to see a lot of the functionality with RAD Studio and with DataSnap. And I wanted to make one that was a little bit different than all of the other examples out on the web today and out on the structures. So I'm trying to set this up so it'll hopefully give you a good idea of how you have to do it. So to get started, what we want to do is we want to come into the file, and we want to say new, and we're going to go into other. So we're going to start going into this process, and I'm going to go into my DataSnap server, and I'm going to create a DataSnap server through the wizard. Now again, this can be done individually, so I could create a form and I could go and drop components on it, or I can use the wizard, and it's going to basically go out there and say, hey Mike, what do you want to build? Do you want to build a VCL Forms application? Do you want a TCP/IP or HTTP or both? Do you want to have authentication with that? Do you want to include a sample method? What do you want? The only thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the sample method because I've got a part of the demonstration that I want to show with that. So we're going to say OK. Now what this will do is this will go out and this will create the new form for our server. And this, because I built a VCL Forms application, this is what's going to show to our customer or to whoever is using the system. So what I want to do is I want to do a couple of things. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to change my form caption, and I'm going to just say something like, this is my board foot calculator, or this is my woodworking server. Okay, so we have our woodworking server in there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go out there and I'm going to start adding and making an interface for this server. To do that, I'm going to start using some components, and I've got a lot of components loaded in my environment, and I actually love the JEDI components. If you're not familiar with the JEDI components, they're an open source project that you can go out, download. There's over 640 components out there, and I use a lot of them just because it's easy and the components are great. I'll be using a lot of different components today throughout the demonstration. So I'm going to go ahead and drop a JV image down, and I'm going to set that alignment to client. So we've got the full client in here. I'm then going to come down to my picture, and I'm going to just say picture, and I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to go into my load feature. Now I've already set up an area for this process, so I'm going to go into my C prompt, and I'm going to open this up, and I've got my DataSnap pictures that I've already set up for this, and I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say my woodworking background, and I'm going to say OK. Now that you can see that there's a woodworking background, it's a little bit too big for what I'm trying to do here, so I can go in here and click on the stretch, and it'll bring it back into the proper sizing. I can open this up just a little bit. The next thing I want to do is I'm going to drop down another image, and we're just going to put this image right here, and I'll open this up a little bit. We'll make it a square like so. And the next thing I want to do for this picture is I'm going to come into here and I'm going to load a picture, and this time I'm going to say the no. And I'm going to come in here and say no, and I'm going to say OK. Now again, the no is a little bit too big for the picture, so I'm going to come back in here and click on the stretch. And what I'm doing is I'm setting up a server status area for it. So I'm basically setting up a complete user interface for this server. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to my JB labels, and I'm going to pick static text. And I'm going to drop this static text down, and I'm going to come into my font area, and I'm going to pick 16 for my font, and I'm going to put in here as my caption, and I want to just put in here server status. Okay, so now we have our server status, and it basically says no. And then the next thing that I want to do is I want to drop a button onto the form. Now I'm going to use the TMS smooth controls, which when you purchase RAD Studio now with your 20% discount from programmers, you also get access to these TMS controls so that you can download these. These are some great controls that are value add for the product. We're going to come in here and we're going to just drop down a control. I'm going to make a button, make it a little bit bigger. I'm also going to change the font of this button because I want to make the font just a little bit larger. So we're going to go and make this a 16 font, and we'll leave that as so. And then I'm going to set my caption to say turn on server. And it helps if I can actually type. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to keep that code. So I'm going to copy that code right there. And the next thing I want to do is I want to see what other things are actually created by that wizard. So the one thing is I have a server container unit 1. Now in 2009, you would have went out and dropped these components, a DS server class, and a DS server transport. You would have dropped those components and you would have worked it together. With the wizard, it automatically generated them out for me. And the one thing I want to do is go into my DS server and I want to say auto start false, because I don't want the server to start up. I want to control when the server starts up and when it doesn't. The server methods unit that actually gets created is actually where the methods that I'm going to expose out and interact with. So think about the server methods as the business server, or where the business logic goes at the end of the day. So then I'm going to come into my unit, and what I want to do is I want to use the server container unit inside of this form so that I can interact with it. So we're going to come in here and we're going to say File New, Use Unit, and this is the new interface for the use unit, and we're going to say the server container unit, and I'm going to say OK. Now the next thing I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and save all. So it's going to come up, and let's just call this, we'll come in here, right mouse click, and I'll say new folder, and we'll say this is the programmer's woodworking example, okay? And it will go into that one, and this is going to be my UN woodworking server, okay? And we'll say yes, and then we'll come in here. We're going to leave the server methods 1 as it is. We'll go ahead and leave the server container as it is, and then we're going to go ahead and do this, and this is going to be the Programmer's Paradise woodworking server, okay? And then we're going to say OK. So the next thing you should see is up here inside of our project group, we have our server, we've used the unit now. The next thing that I want to do is now I want to make sure that when I click on my turn on server, that it actually turns on. So I'm going to come into here, and what we're going to do is I'm going to come into my structure here, and I'm going to say if, and then what I want to do is I want to do an if-else with begin ends. So I'm going to go ahead and do it this way. So it automatically writes it out for me. So I just did a control space on that, and that brought up the code completion. And so now what I want to do is I want to say ADV smooth button dot caption. And what I want to do is I want to check to see if it equals turn on server. If it equals turn on server, then of course I want to begin. And what I want to basically set up is I want to do a control space, and I'm going to start typing in the word server, and you'll see there's my server container unit 1. Then I want to go out here and I want to look at for my server container 1, and then I want to look at for my DS server 1 right there, and then I want to start it, okay? So that's going to turn it on. So we're turning it on. The next thing that I want to do after that is I want to go out there and I want to set my my button caption. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say ADV smooth button caption, and I'm going to set that to, and I'm going to copy that back in, and I'm going to set this to off, okay? And then we'll go ahead and semicolon. The next thing I want to do is I also want to update that image that I was using up there. So I'm going to say JV image 2, because that's the image, and I'm going to say picture, because I want to load a picture, dot, and I'm going to load this from a file. I'm going to put 2 single parentheses in here, and I'm going to go down to my environment here, and I'm going to just bring in the directory where they're located on my box, and I'm going to basically say green yes.png. Okay, so that looks great. Now I'm going to copy this entire process, and I'm going to put it down here. Now the difference is this time I don't want to start it, I want to stop it. The next thing I want to do is I want to turn on the server, and the last thing I want to do is turn on the red no. So I can come in here and say red no ping. Okay. So now when I go into design, I see that I have my process, I see everything's there. I'm going to do a save all, and now the next thing that I want to do is come in and actually run this. I want to see if it actually works. So I'm going to come in, I'm going to compile it. Notice that it comes up and says no. I'm going to turn on my server. It's going to pop up and ask me, hey Mike, do you want to open up the communications protocol because I'm using Windows 7, and is that okay? And I want to go ahead and allow access for that. So now I can see that my server is off. If I want to turn it off, I can come in there and turn it off. So now we've done the little interface so that we now can control the server. We can now control everything that we need. So now I want to go in there and start adding some business logic. So let's go in there and go into my server methods. Now again, remember, server methods are where you do your business logic inside of your code. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come out to my code area, and I'm just going to go right into the public area, and I'm going to do a function. And I'm going to say function, who are you, okay? And then I'm going to just return a string on that process because I just want to give a status. So I can do a Control-Shift-C, and that's going to go ahead and bring complete my class. So it's going to set up a new method for me, my function, and then I'm just going to say result equals, and I am the woodworking server 1.0. Okay, real simple. So now we've basically, I'm going to save it, and now we've basically added some business logic to our server. Now, what's interesting about DataSnap, and this is one of the things that I wanted to go over, is that DataSnap is built on DB Express technology, which means that it can be used and interfaced with the Data Explorer inside of the product. So let's go ahead and run the server again. So we're going to go ahead and run the server, and you'll see that the server is popping up on the screen. And then I'm going to go ahead and turn it on. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my Data Explorer, and I'm going to go ahead and create a new DataSnap connection to this DataSnap server. So I'm going to right mouse click on here, and I'm going to say add new connection, and I'm going to call this programmers WW, and we'll say OK. You'll notice that over in my Data Explorer, it actually creates a programmers WW, and I'm going to go ahead, right mouse click, and I'm going to modify the connection. When it comes up, it's going to ask me, what protocol do I want to use? Well, since I set up our server to be TCP/IP, I want to set it up as TCP/IP, and I also want to set the host as localhost. Okay, and then I can test my connection to make sure that everything's working, and as it returns, the connection came back as true. And I'm going to say OK. Next thing I'm going to do is go into my programmers structure, and I'm going to go into the procedures. And when I open up the procedures, you'll see all the different exposures of the DataSnap server right there for you. And if I come down here, you'll see that I have a who are you. And if I double click on my server method, I can come in and I can actually query the server just like I would any other server out there. So I can come out here and I can say, who are you? Now this is not looking for any input or anything like that. So I can say, who are you? And I can come up here and say, execute the service. When I do that, the return value down here comes back and says, hey, I'm the woodworking server 1.0. So I've automatically built a middle-tiered server with business logic that I can interact with now inside of my environment very quickly and easily inside of Delphi. Okay? So now that might be exciting for some people, but it probably isn't the most exciting part for you know, other things. We need to do a little bit more than what we normally do. So let's go in here and we're going to go back in and let's do another function. So let's do a function, and what we'll do is we'll call this is calc BF, or board foot. So we're going to do a board foot calculation, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a B thick, I'm going to have a B width for my board, and I'm also going to have a B length for it, and I'm going to make those a double, and then I'm going to return a string. Okay? So now I've got that. I'm going to do completion again on it, so I'm going to do Control-Shift-C. That's going to bring me down into my environment down here. The next thing I'm going to do is add a variable, because I want to add a variable for board feet, and we'll make this a double also. Okay? And then I'm going to come into my calculation area, and I'm just going to go board feet colon equals, and what I want to do is take the B thick times my B width, okay, times my B length, and then I'm going to divide that by 144. And what this is basically doing is you take the thickness times the width times the length, and that gives you a total number of square inches. And then when you divide by 144, that basically tells you how many board feet you have, because if you take 12 times 12, 12 inches by 12 inches, it's 144 inches, and so that's one board foot at 1 inch thick. So this is basically 144, so we've got that. The next thing I'm going to do is then set the result. So I'm going to go in here and say result equals, and then I'm going to do a float to string, and then we're going to put in my board foot, or board feet, and it's going to return that for the process. Okay? Pretty straightforward, pretty easy, not too much we have to worry about. Now, the next thing that I want to do, now that I've built this, and this is where we're going to diverge just a little bit, the next thing I want to do is I actually want to test this unit. Now, a lot of times people forget that Delphi has full unit testing capabilities built inside of it. So what I want to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to go up to my project group, and I'm going to right mouse click on it and say add new project. I'm going to come down to unit test, and I'm going to say test project. It's going to come up and it's going to say, hey, Mike, do you want to do this? And I'm going to say, yep, that's exactly what I want to do. We want the GUI interface, and we're going to say finished. The next thing I want to do is come up and say file, new, other, and now I want to add a test case to this process because I want to test the calculation that I've done. So we're going to come in here, and as you can see, we have all the methods for the server test that we've got. So we got who are you, and we got calc BF. Now, I don't care about the who are you. It's just returning a string for this one, so I'm not going to test that one. But I do care about the calc BF. So I'm going to come in here, and we're going to go ahead and say next, and we're going to say finish. So we're going to use it as it comes in. Now, as you can see, I have my calculations down here below. I've got it set up for my parameters. I've got it set up here for my setup, tear down, the whole 9 yards. Now, when I create this, because I'm actually creating a new server, what I have to do is I have to come into my setup area, and I'm going to create a server, but I'm not going to pass it anything. I'm just going to create a nil server, so it's just going to be able to create the object so I can interact with the actual unit itself. Now, once I've done that, now I want to come down here and actually set things up. So I'm going to come in here and say B thick, and we'll go colon equals, and it's going to be 1.0, semicolon. And then we're going to do the B width, and it's going to also be 12.0. And then we're going to also say B length, and it's going to be 12 also, because what I want to check is I want to make sure that it's going to calculate out to 1. I want to make sure that it's going to calculate 1 board foot for me, so I know exactly what's going to happen. So then I come inside of here, and now I want to validate the results. So I go out there, I do my return value, and I'm going to go out there and calculate my method. I'm going to do it. It's going to return back a string. So what I want to do is I want to check equals, okay? And now I can put in my string. So I'm going to be looking for 1.0, comma, return value. Okay, that's the return value that's coming in here. And if it doesn't match, it's going to be a bad calculation. Okay, So now I've got 1.0, bad calculation, the whole 9 yards. And what I want to do is I want to save everything now. Now what happens with the test servers, it actually puts it into the directory of test. So I'm going to come in here and say test, and I'm going to say this group is my PP woodworking group, example 1, and we'll say save. And so now that I've done this, let's go ahead and let's run this server. So I'm going to go over into my project manager, and I'm going to kick it off, and we're going to say yes. Now what this is going to do is this is going to kick off the test runner. Okay, so I can see my test runner right here, and then I can come into here and I can say run test. And notice that when you run the test, that it basically comes back as shows a failure. And the interesting thing about the failure is that it shows exactly what was expected. I was expecting 1.0, but I returned back a 1, which is a format issue with the string. Now I was just made aware that that you cannot see my screen, so give me a second here while I share. Let me see if I can just do the entire desktop. Okay, there. I think that'll do this now. So now, again, I'm going to go back into my structure there. There is the interface that I actually created for you guys. If you didn't see it, sorry about that. The next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and, as I said, we're going to change this unit test, and because it was I said I was looking for 1.0, and the actual return was 1 and not 1.0. So I'm just going to come in here and put 1 in here. We'll do a save all, and now I'm going to run this again. So when I run this test, the test will come up, and you'll see that there's my calc VF, and everything's looking okay right now at this point. So I can move this up a little bit. We can move this stuff down, move it around, however we want. And then when I'm ready to run the test, I can just go click run, and you can see that everything turned green. And so we're good there. So now that my test is successful. So now we have a unit test to test my product if we need to set it up that way. Okay? So that works good. So now we have our server done. We now need to build our client so that we can interact with this. So I'm going to come back up to my group again. I'm going to say add new project. And this time I'm going to go back into my Delphi projects, and I'm going to go into VCL forms. Okay? And this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to say VCL form application, and it's going to come up. And I'm going to basically come into here, and I'm going to set my caption for this form to be something like board foot calculator client. Okay? So we got our board foot client up there. The next thing I'm going to do is also set my font structure down here, because I want the form font to be 18. So I'm going to set this down to 18 so that everything that I drop on it is basically going to be set for me, so I don't have to go through that process. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into my JD images again, and I'm going to drop down a new image. So I'm going to come back up into my scrolls, and I'm going to go to images and animators. I'm going to drop down an image. I'm going to make that image client, so I'm going to align it to the client. And then I'm going to go out and pick up my picture that I want to actually display. So I'm going to go out here to load. It's going to bring up my area here, and I'm going to go down to my C drive. Again, I already have these pictures set up. And I'm going to come out to this, and I'm going to set up my wood side, and we'll say OK. And then I'm going to go ahead and set the stretch feature again, like so. The next thing I'm going to do is I want to go up to my images, and I'm going to go up to my, basically my labels, and I'm going to start dropping some static text down. So right here, for this static text, I want this to actually be a fairly large one. So I'm actually going to go into the font, and I'm going to set the font to, let's say, 48. So let's make it a little bit bigger than we normally would. And then I'm going to go out here, and we'll open this up. And then the next thing I'm going to do is we're going to set the font to board foot calculator. Okay, and I'm also going to open this up a little bit more, and I'm going to make it so it's there, and then I'm going to come in and I want to set my, the anchors for this to be top, left, right, so that it stays right where it's at inside of there. So if I open this up a little bit, it'll still do that. I also want to change the look and the alignment to basically be centered. So I want it to be centered. So if I open it up a little bit more, it'll be centered. The next thing that I want to do is I want to drop down some more labels. So I'm going to basically drop down 4 labels. So I'm going to drop down 1, 2, 3, and then 4. And then what we're going to do with these labels is I'm going to come in and I'm going to set the description for these to basically say board thickness in inches. Okay? And then I'm going to come into this one, and we're going to set this one is, we'll open this up a little bit, and we'll say this is board, and I'll also correct my spelling mistake there. So we'll say board, and we'll open this back up, and where's my, we'll go back up here, there's my board, and then we will put board width in inches, okay? And then the next one, we'll come in here, and we'll pull this down, and I'm going to go ahead and make this board length in inches, okay? And then down below, I'm going to open this up, and we will say that this one is my basically number of board feet, okay? The next thing I'm going to do is come up here, and we're going to go ahead and select all of these, and I want to go ahead and make them to the right. So I'm going to position them and align them on my horizontal to my right side. So we now have that. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go up and drop down 4 edit boxes. And I want to show you the new edit boxes that we've introduced in 2009, because there are a couple of extra features that you may or may not be aware of with the new edit box. So I'm going to come in here, and we'll make sure that we line up and that we're lined up there. So now a couple of things. I'm going to select all of my edit boxes in here, and I'm going to come up here and I'm going to set my alignment to right justified. Great. The next thing I want to do is make sure that it only displays numbers. So we can come down into our numbers only and say, yes, we want it to do that. The next thing I want to do is I want to clear out the edit text. So I can come into my text area, hit enter, and it's gone. Now the next thing I can do is I can also put in hint text inside of there, or text hint. So I can come in here, click on edit 1, and since this one is thickness, I can come down here and say text hint, and this is going to be called thick. Okay? And then I can come into my next one, and I can say this is going to be my width. And then I can say my length. So this gives the hint to the user of what's going on inside of the product. And this will be where my answer is going to be. Okay? So that's going to be the answer. So now we've actually built our GUI front end. So what I want to do is I want to do a save all. And I'm going to go into my programmer's woodworking example. And this is going to be my UN main client form. Okay? And then we're going to make this my BF Calc client, okay, for the thing. And there we go. So now we have our user interface that we want to interact with our server with. Now keep in mind, the one thing you have to do with the server is that when you're going to be interacting with it and adding it, you've got to actually make connection to the actual server. So I'm going to come back up to my server here. I'm going to double click on it, which brings focus back into Project Manager, and I'm going to run without debug. So it's going to turn it on, and I'm going to come out and turn on my server. So you see that there's a yes there, and I'm going to go ahead and minimize that. The next thing I'm going to do is, because again, this is built on top of DBX Express, I'm going to go into my DBX Express, and I'm going to drop down a TSQL connection onto my form. Now, once I've dropped that onto my form, the next thing I want to do is pick the driver. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to pick a DataSnap driver. Now I can go in here and look at this, and I can see which port it's using, and I can hook that up with my server and make sure, but I'm using the default, so everything is good. And I can just come in here and say log off the login prompt. I don't need to prompt for a login. And then I want to say connected to true. So now I've connected to that server, and we're actually changing information back and forth. Now, to get the connection to my client, what I want to do is actually expose the proxy server out. I'm going to make a proxy to my server so that I can interact with it. So I come up to my SQL connection, right mouse click on it, and say generate client proxy. As you can see, there's the who are you, here's my calc BF, so it has all of the information that I need for that. So I'm going to go ahead and do a save all, and it's going to come up and ask me for this one, and this is going to be called my UN client proxy. Okay? So now I know what that is. Now remember, anytime you change the server and you want to expose that, you got to regenerate the client proxy. So just keep that in mind as a general process. The next thing I want to do is actually add that proxy into my form. So I'm going to go up and use unit. So I'm going to say file, use unit, and I'm going to say the client proxy, and I'm going to say OK. So now I can actually interact with that as you would expect. The next thing that I want to do is I want to come in here and I want to drop another button down so that I can execute on this. So I'm going to come into my TMS Smooth Controls, and I'm going to drop in my button. And what I'm going to do is I'll line it up here. We'll make this a little bit larger, so it's a little bit larger there. And we're going to even make it a little bit larger than that. So then what I want to do is come into my button, and what we're going to say is we want to calculate board feet. So I'm going to come into here. Here's my caption over here, and I'm going to say calculate. Excuse me, board feet. Okay. The next thing that I want to do is I also want to, you know, I'm a little bit, I don't really like the color of gray for this one. So I'm actually going to come in to my font, and I'm going to change my font color to white. Okay. And we'll say OK. So now we've got that. And I'm also going to change the color of the button. I'm going to change the color to blue. I think blue will look a little bit stronger and a little bit better than what we had. And I also want to add a picture to that because I wanted to highlight what you're going to be doing. So I'm going to go ahead and say open, and then I'm going to come back out to my structure again. I'm going to open it up. I've got my DataSnap pictures, and I'm going to come down here to my stationary example, and what we'll do is we'll open this up just a little bit. There we go. So now we have the calculate board feet. So now we have our user interface that hopefully looks okay. And then the next thing I'm going to do is double click on this. So I'm going to go in, and now let's write that code to actually calculate this. I'm going to go up and add a var section to this, and I'm going to call this my BF calculator server. Okay, and it's going to be of T, and it's going to be a server method client, one client. Okay, so I went out there and we've defined that. The next thing I'm going to do is come into here, and I'm going to say my server colon equals, and I'm going to do the T server method again, and I'm going to do a create on it. Now what it's looking for, as you can see, it's looking for an SQL connection. So we already have an SQL connection set up in here, and it's looking for the DBX connection inside of there. So now we've actually connected to our server, we're using the proxy, we're going through it, so now all we have to do is set up the interface. So the next thing I want to do is type in try, and it's going to do a try finally for me. And the next thing I want to do is say edit, and I want to double check this just to make sure. So I'm going to come into my form again, and I'm just going to click on this to make sure that it is edit for, which it is, just so I was knowing what I was doing. I should have named it something. And I'm going to say that the text for this is going to be equal to my BF calculation server dot, and then we're going to calc BF inside of here. And the next thing that I want to do is I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say string to float, and inside of there I'm going to say edit1.text. Okay, I'm going to put a comma. We're going to come over here and I'm going to do another string to float, and we'll do edit2.text. comma, and then we'll do another string to float, and we'll do an edit3.text, comma, and parentheses, semicolon. And that's basically all we need to do to interact with our server. The next thing we need to do is fill in our finally. And all we want to do is basically free it. So we're going to say free and put a semicolon. So now we've actually saved it. We now actually have our server, which is actually up and running right now. It's actually, the server is turned off, so we can turn on the server. So we have that server turned on. So it's turned on with yes. And now I can come into my client, and oh well, that's okay. It helps if I would actually go to my client and actually turn it on, and we'll go ahead and compile this. So now you can see that I have my board foot calculator. I can come in here and I can say the thickness is 1. My inches and width is let's say 12. And then my length is 12. So we'll calculate the board foot, it comes back 1. So let's change the inches then, and notice when if I come out here and I click off of that, notice how it goes back to width. So it automatically takes care of that. Let's say the width was 8 inches, and let's say that it was 84 inches long. So how many board feet is that? And that comes out to 4.6 board feet. And I would probably put a rounding issue on there. But that gives you kind of an idea of the power that I built a middle tier server. I did a unit test with that server, and I also built a client front end for the server so that it could actually calculate it out in a very short amount of time. Now I could do data sets, I could do JSON, I could set up that server so it was a web server, and I could have done a HTML client. I could have done all kinds of different things with all of the capabilities that were available to me. So if I bring up my server here, you'll see there's my server. And so there's my server, and if I want to, I can turn it on, turn it off, so you can see exactly how it was done. So with that, I'm going to go back into my regular process here. So let's go ahead and we're going to exit out of the sharing, and we'll see exactly what kind of, if there are any questions. Again, my email address is michael.rozlog@embarcadero.com. If you have any suggestions, corrections, or anything like that, please let me know. Also, my blogs, blogs.embarcadero.com/michaelrozlog. Also, keep in mind that you have 20% discount because you guys came to the programmers webinar today and you listened to me talk, and I'm sorry about talking so long, but since you guys listened to me talk, you guys get an additional 20% off of Rad Studio, or if you're buying Delphi, or if you're buying C++ Builder. So keep that in mind, that it's really a great offer at this point for you guys to go out there and pick it up. If you're thinking about picking it up, it's an excellent time to do it. One thing I will want to mention, inside of C++ Builder today, we can't build those servers that I did in Delphi. It's a Delphi-specific server build right now. Hopefully in the near future we'll have it for C++ Builder, maybe in the next release. I'm hoping that we get it in there. But for right now, you can only build those servers with Delphi. Let's see if there's any other questions out here that I need to answer. Let's see.
Okay,
is Embarcadero?
Michael, hey, thanks. Michael, thanks a lot. We appreciate it. We do have a few questions here. We'll start with the first one. It says, is Embarcadero planning to create a new DataSnap server without COM in C++ Builder in 2010? Is it possible that it creates the server only in Delphi 2010?
Right now, that's exactly what I just basically made that highlight on, is right now it's in Delphi. In 2010, we only have the ability to create the DataSnaps, the non-COM-based DataSnap servers in Delphi. We can connect to a Delphi DataSnap server, non-COM-based. We can connect to it with C++ Builder, but we just can't build those servers. We're hoping to get that functionality in the next release of the product.
Great. It looks like the next question is, it says, I use CDs to create a brief application and Midas to sync to the server. What is new for that part in 2010?
Okay, I'm trying to see that question. Okay. I use CDs to create brief application in Midas to sync to the server. What's new? As far as the Midas side of the house, there's been nothing new added to it other than the fact that when you buy the Enterprise Edition of Delphi or RAD Studio, you actually get the Midas source code now with that. So we haven't added anything new to the Midas server or anything like that, but you do get the source code now for the Midas DLL inside of the product, inside the Enterprise Edition.
Great. It looks like we have one more question here. Scroll down a little bit. It says, can it pass user-defined structure between client and server?
Great question. And the answer really comes down to we are passing JSON objects back and forth. So you can define a JSON object that would basically be your custom structure or your user-defined structure, and you can pass that structure back and forth. As I was showing you before, you could pass like, like we were doing like a customer which had a name, address, and maybe a communications way of doing it. And you could basically pass that back and forth using the DBX JSON objects. You could pass that back and forth with your own customized structures with that.
Great, Mike. Thank you very much. It looks like one more question here. It says, is JSON object only pass strings?
Well, in a sense, yes, but you can pass binary with JSON. There is a little bit more work to it, but yes, you can pass anything. It's basically a property and name value pairs. So you can basically pass anything you want with that property, but there is a little bit more work if you want to do it with a binary or a different structure.
Okay, Michael, thank you very much. It looks like that's it for questions. I believe if anybody wants to email Michael directly, you can see his email up there. I'm sure he'll be happy to answer your questions at a later date and time.
Absolutely, and please don't anybody forget, if you guys are on this call, I hope it was informative. I hope you learned something, and remember there is an additional 20% off on the product. Make sure you give programmers a call and pick up the product. It's a phenomenal product.
Thanks, Michael. So, of course, obviously, before we let you go, we want to tell you that we will be having this 20% off promotion running now through March 26th. So please, you give us a call. You can visit us on the website at programmers.com/Embarcadero, both in the U.S. and Canada. You see the 800 numbers. Our sales reps are very knowledgeable and trained in this technology. And, of course, if we can't answer your questions, we always have Michael to fall back on. So definitely look to take advantage of this offer between now and March 26th. With that, on behalf of Programmers Paradise and Embarcadero, I'd like to thank you all for attending. If you need any further additional information, please contact us at info@programmers.com, and you can visit us on the web at the addresses below. And, of course, we're always waiting here for your call at the 800 numbers that are published on your screen.